The President of the United States is going to lie to you tonight. There's just no other way to put it. For those of you saying, what else is new? I get it, but this is going to be something different. Bigger. Trump is going to be giving a national address tonight about foreign interference in the 2020 election as a pretext for something he's planning to do for the 2026 election. The White House says there's new evidence, which there likely isn't, but he'll make the claims anyway. So today, I want to get ahead of those lies for once. We're going to be talking about what's been proven about the 2020 election, what the president and his supporters keep saying about it despite that proof, and what Trump might be preparing to do after his speech tonight. Even if you get to this episode after his speech, there is still a lot you should know. It's Thursday, July 16th, 2026. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Grant Hermes. On Monday this week, Trump announced on Truth Social that he'd be addressing the nation at 9 p.m., but he didn't say about what. First, we got little drips from White House insiders that said it was going to be about overall election security and the 2026 election, and then we were told it was actually about the 2020 election. And when Trump was asked point blank in the Oval Office, here's what he said.
Expect and tell
well, I'd rather save it. It will concern that subject, and we'll have a couple of other things to say also. But I'd rather save it, but it's really big news. It's really, really big news. And our country has to shape up. But that's what we're going to be talking about Thursday is it doesn't get bigger, because without free and fair elections, you don't have a country. We'll be discussing other things too, but it's going to be a very big announcement. Yeah.
Mr. President, so not a lot to go on there. But on Wednesday, CBS was told by an anonymous White House official that the president was going to be joined by the CIA director, the acting director of national intelligence, multiple election-denying members of the House, and a far-right conspiracy theorist during his address to declassify new information about Chinese interference in the 2020 election. The claim is that China hacked into voter information, the CIA knew about it, and didn't share it with Trump while he was president during the 2020 election. Trump's director of national intelligence at the time was John Ratcliffe. John Ratcliffe is Trump's current CIA director, so that means that Ratcliffe lied to Trump then, is now admitting to him that he was lying, and wasn't immediately, jettisoned into the sun by Trump's rage. But in all seriousness, that doesn't hold up. Here's what we do know about foreign interference in the 2020 election. It didn't happen. In March of 2021, the U.S. Office of National Intelligence, which oversees 18 different spy agencies and departments, published its report about the 2020 election. Importantly, that report was compiled and written by intelligence officers under Trump. What that found was, with a high degree of confidence, China did not attempt to influence the outcome of the 2020 election. Specifically, the report says we did not identify China attempting to interfere with election infrastructure or provide funding to any candidates or parties. There is in this report, and I expect that Trump and his allies will mention it in this speech or after this speech tonight, something called a minority view, which was the case for one national intelligence officer for cyber, who said that they disagreed with parts with this intelligence community assessment because they said it gave more weight to indications that China preferred former President Trump's defeat and the election of a more predictable member of the establishment instead of Trump. But importantly, that officer agreed with the overall report that there was no evidence suggesting that China tried to interfere with the election process. I know that was a lot, but again, that entire report was compiled by John Ratcliffe, and Trump was briefed on it on January 7th, 2021, and we know that because it says so in the report. And then there was the joint report from the Department of Justice and Homeland Security, again, run by people Trump handpicked to lead them. In their own separate report, they said, quote, "We are aware of multiple public claims that one or more foreign governments, including Venezuela, Cuba, or China, owned, directed, or controlled infrastructure used in the 2020 federal elections, implemented a scheme to manipulate election infrastructure, or tallied, changed, or otherwise manipulated vote count. and said, "We have no evidence, not through intelligence collection on the foreign actors themselves, not through physical security and cybersecurity monitoring of voting systems across the country, not through post-election audits, and not through any other means that a foreign government or other actors compromised election infrastructure to manipulate election results." And what that means is that the evidence to say that foreign actors, specifically China, interfered in the election by changing votes did not happen. It has been long known that China has likely gotten its hands on U.S. voter data that is publicly available, specifically out of the state of Georgia. But again, that's open to anybody with a spare $500 and some time to kill. The outlet Real Clear Politics, which is considered a nonpartisan nonprofit, has been told by a source that Trump is going to claim that these Chinese hackers got into state voter rolls to send out tens of thousands of manufactured mail-in ballots so Biden could win in 2020, and that Trump's own intelligence community buried that evidence to help Biden win. Again, the same intelligence community that Trump was running during that election, which means for this to be true, either there was a mass conspiracy within the administration for these people to put themselves out of work, or Trump was running a wildly incompetent government. But it's not true. And we know that because of the real strength of American elections, which is that we don't have one big election, but a series of 10,000 small ones all happening at once. Election day in the U.S. isn't a guitar solo, it's a symphony. For what Trump is going to claim to be true, China would have to have such a sophisticated operation to undermine our elections that, and deep breath here, it got past the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the Pentagon, the CIA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency, which Trump created for this purpose in 2018. And then the ballots and hacking would have to get past every state-level law enforcement and election safeguard, and then it would have to get past every local election safeguard, including hacking voting machines that aren't connected to the internet, and bypass rigorous voter fraud screening, which we know exists because voter fraud is so low it's practically non-existent. Votes, and specifically faked mail-in ballots, would have to be so good that they would hold up for years without hundreds of eyes that look at them, not noticing that they were forgeries, because elections are subject to multiple audits and reviews. And in 2020, more than 60 court cases were brought alleging mass voter fraud, including allegations that foreign actors, specifically China, were behind it. Not a single one of those cases was decided in the president's favor, and some of his attorneys who made those claims were banned from practicing law for making them. Audits done in states like Arizona by people specifically looking for fraudulent Chinese ballots, these were people who were hammers looking for nails, didn't turn up any evidence of what Trump is expected to claim to be true tonight. In order for what Trump is going to say to be true, a breakdown of all of those levels would have to be so catastrophic, the country would be in a total state of breakdown, on the verge of a failed state. Think Haiti, or Yemen, or South Sudan, or Syria. And before you make some glib remark, go touch some grass. We do not live in a country like that. Now, also, according to that source from Real Clear Politics, Trump is going to claim that there have been more than 100,000 non-citizens found on voter rolls across the country. I have talked and written a lot about that here and on the Substack. It's just not true. Data from U.S. Immigration Services from August of last year found that non-citizens on voter rolls accounted for 0.04% of its voter verification system, with the actual number likely much lower because those non-citizens are actually citizens, and their proof of that just hadn't caught up with the database yet. Also, we know that states are good at verifying their voter data is up to date. A brand new study from the Nonpartisan Center for Election Innovation and Research found that the national average for active voters on their rolls, meaning voters with up-to-date information, is 85%. Would we like the U.S. to be an A-plus student and not a B student? Sure, but 85% is extremely good, and active voter data is only one piece of our election security puzzle. Also, having non-citizens on the rolls isn't the same thing as having non-citizens voting, and some states actually allow non-citizens to vote in local elections. That's a practice that's gone back to the nation's founding, believe it or not. So it would make sense that in some states and some places, those voters would be there. Also, there's the claim that non-citizens voting means that Democrats win. We just don't have any evidence of that because there's no evidence to back up that they're voting en masse in any way, shape, or form, but we can't know that that would be happening. But the president is going to make those claims anyway. The question is, to what end? You know how every social media platform is basically engineered to make you angry and keep you scrolling? That's not an accident. Outrage performs better than nuance, so the algorithm feeds you outrage. I see it every day as someone making news content for a living. The loudest, most biased takes get the reach. The careful, fact-driven stuff like I do my best to bring you here gets buried. That's why I joined SaySo. It's a brand new news app just launched, built by a group of former journalists and engineers who asked, what if we build news from scratch for people who actually want to be informed instead of people who just want to keep scrolling? No algorithm optimizing for outrage, no AI slop, just vetted creators delivering fact-driven coverage, curated so you can know what's going on in 5 minutes and then get on with your day. If you're the kind of person who is intentional about your sleep, your workouts, your work, what you eat, but your news diet is just whatever your feed throws at you, this is for you. The same energy finally applied to how you stay informed. I'm one of the first creators on SaySo, and my favorite feature is that I can link my sources right in the video. That way, you know how I'm telling you the truth. And if you sign up now, you'll be one of the first users to join. You can download SaySo. The link is in the show notes and the description. Go check it out and be as smart as you know you are. All right, let's get back to the show. There are two major reasons the president is likely making this speech tonight. First is the Save America Act. Like a lot of this stuff, I've talked a lot about this bill, but really quickly, it is the extremely restrictive and redundant proof of citizenship at registration, voter ID at the polls, and mail-in voting ban bill that has been stalled in the Senate since February. Without a doubt, Trump is going to try to use these claims of Chinese election stealing to scare 10 more Republican senators into changing their minds on this bill less than a month before they head home for break on August 10th, and more importantly, ahead of the deadline that's mandated by federal law that no changes can be made to voter rolls 90 days before the election, which is August 4th. That's a hard sell, given that so many senators have held out for this long, and there are a lot of them who are having a really hard time buying what Trump is selling about this. Outgoing Representative Thomas Massie explained that thinking today on MS Now.
But I don't think the problem, is that our elections aren't secure because we control the House, we control the Senate, we control the White House, and in some degree we control the Supreme Court. So I asked my Republican colleagues, why are you complaining about election fraud? We won all the damn elections.
He's got a point, right? How is it that fraud is so rampant, yet Republicans control the whole of government? How is it that they were allowed back in power if the operation to undermine American democracy is so sophisticated? It's just not believable. Still, the threat of China fits neatly into the new Red Scare that Republicans have been pushing over the rise of Democratic Socialist candidates across the country. Here's Speaker Mike Johnson.
We live in dangerous times. We're fighting communism on our own shores, and we're fighting evil terrorists and tyrants around the world. And we have to be able to protect our national security. So this is not the place to get into the details of that.
So we'll see if what senators hear tonight is convincing enough to pass the bill that Trump wants, because they've been hearing things like that from their colleagues. But I also think there is something else that Trump might hint at or might just outright announce tonight in this 20-minute address that is much, much more dangerous. In February of this year, 2020 election conspiracy theorists who had access to the president started circulating a draft executive order around the White House called the People's Executive Order. What it was a roadmap for Trump to declare a national emergency because of foreign election interference dating back to his first term, again under his watch. That order would have the president force states to have every eligible voter re-register to vote, get a brand new voter ID number for a system that doesn't currently exist. It would force all states to completely overhaul how they run their elections so that they use and hand count paper ballots only, which we know through studies for years, is far less safe and accurate than using voting machines. It would keep mail-in voting intact, but if Trump were to make this order real, that would almost certainly be stripped out. Now, under the National Emergencies Act, Trump could also deploy certain federal agencies, potentially the National Guard or even elements of the military, to certain states or cities to help run elections or even seize election material. He could interrupt communication abilities. He could stop certain kinds of travel, even within states. The National Emergencies Act gives the president immediate access to more than 130 of some of the most potent and expansive executive powers that the president is afforded. Now, Trump has floated the idea of declaring martial law or this kind of national emergency in the past around elections. In 2020, it was actively discussed within the White House about how he could use it during the George Floyd protest to declare a national emergency over the election because the protests were going on and we couldn't effectively run an election. That didn't happen. And then just last month, when he canceled the signing of the landmark housing bill, he called the Save America Act a national emergency. It's not a hard leap to see that if that bill is still dead in the water in the Senate, that he would then see the entire election as an emergency. And then there are also activists that have staked out places around him, like Scott Pressler, who was given an award by Trump and J.D. Vance for his election denial work, and has spoken and met with officials at the White House numerous times. On Sunday this week, Pressler, a leading voice in whatever you want to call his field, called on Trump to declare a national emergency over the 2026 election. This is a guy who has the ear of the White House, prominent leaders in the Republican Party, and has been all over the president's TV screen and Fox News for the last 6 months. That is going to matter. Now, if all of this makes you feel a little like walking into the ocean with your pockets full of rocks, I got you. First, there is no legal authority for Trump to declare this a national emergency. Election law and constitutional law experts are unified in this. The Constitution is very clear. States run their own elections. And the fact that Trump has repeated these claims for years now, new evidence or not, means that it's not an emergency. And courts would likely strike down this executive order right away because lawsuits will be brought right away. Second, it goes back to this idea, too, that America's election is really a lot of small elections in a trench coat. The logistics needed for the federal government to swoop in and pull off this kind of massive thing, especially in such a short amount of time, is practically, and I mean that word in the literal sense, impossible. Third, Americans like voting. Even if our turnout is generally low and we complain about that every election, we like it. 95% of Americans say the right to vote is important as an American ideal, and nearly 2/3 say it's extremely important. So the threat of taking that away in some form or impeding it isn't going to go well for Trump and his party. All of that stuff Trump would likely have been told by people around him at this point. It's why some Republicans told Politico today they were scared shitless of what Trump is going to say, because they know that it could make this an incredibly difficult home stretch of the midterm campaigns for them. So really then, why would Trump do this? Because he is obsessed with the fact that he lost in 2020 and can't psychologically process it, and now it's all of our problem. I'm going to quote the authoritarian expert Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who wrote this in her newsletter this week about what this is really about for Trump. This is long, so hang with me. For autocrats, holding office is a way of solving their personal, political, legal, and financial problems. And so government institutions are repurposed to prioritize whatever core emotional and practical situation consumes the leader, keeping him up at night. For President Donald Trump, that situation is the 2020 election. The big lie is back because Trump has a psychological and practical need to prove that his devastating loss never happened. So because Trump can't psychologically process this loss from 6 years ago, one he's used to maintain an iron grip on one of America's two political parties, and then return to the most powerful office in the world, and then use that to make billions of dollars for himself and his family, and cement his legacy in American history as a 2-term president, the second of which to serve non-consecutive terms. We're going to get a speech tonight designed to undermine our democracy. The irony, of all of this, of course, is that the main goal of foreign actors like the ones that Trump is going to fabricate is never to change votes at any level of scale. They can't. It's to sow doubt. It's to undermine our confidence in our elections, in our ideals, and in each other when it comes to the most fundamental right we have as Americans, the vote. So tonight, Trump will be doing the work of those adversaries for them while self-soothing from behind the presidential seal. Okay, that is it for today's show. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the Make It Make Sense, where this week's reporting is about the DHS fantasy of the weaponized vehicle. It is a one-of-a-kind investigation from Make It Make Sense into dozens of incidents where ICE agents claimed to have been victims of vehicle attacks. Out of 31 I tracked from the start of last year, only one of them proved to be true. Plus, I put together a page, it'll hit your inbox very soon, of all the reporting I've done this year to help you make sense of what Trump is going to say tonight. I've been accidentally assembling this piece by piece, but also kind of expecting us to get to this point. So think of this like the Avengers Infinity War of election denial rebuttal here. The link is in the description to both of those things if you want to support the show and get all of that, plus access to things you forgot from civics class, the Make It Make Nonsense culture essays, and a full backlog of the podcast. It is less than what you'd spend on one coffee a month. You can sign up for free, you can get in for free, and you can become a paid subscriber. I think you'll like it. And as always, share the show on social media. You can tag me at Grant Hermes on Twitter, Blue Sky, and the SaySo News app, and at Grant_Hermes on everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Grant Hermes, and I'll talk to you next time.